Will Nigeria's two-party system tremble? Africa's most populous nation, no stranger to bruising campaigns, but never since the 1999 return to democracy has there been a runoff in a presidential election. Now, in a nation where the average age is 18, could voters turn away from the Big Ten parties and candidates who are both in their 70s? At age 61, the third man is also a political veteran, but Peter Obi is running as a reformist insurgent and hopes to tap into the energy of the 2020 anti-corruption End SARS protest movement. Can he break the ethnic calculus that goes into electioneering in Nigeria? What do Obi and his rivals stand for? And what about previous promises of reform, like those of the outgoing Muhammadu Buhari? As always, poverty, the misspent spoils of oil revenues, the inability to offer answers to insurgencies and insecurity will be high on voters' minds. Today in the France 24 debate, we're looking at Nigeria's uncertain election. Joining us from Abuja, Aliyu Audu is youth spokesperson for Ola Tinubu's APC party. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, viewers. Hello. Good evening from Nigeria.
Also in the Nigerian capital, Daniel Bwala, spokesperson for Atiku Abubakar's PDP party. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me. Good evening.
Geopolitics consultant Emmanuel Iga is with us as well. How are you?
Very fine. Thank you. And greetings to the viewers.
And from London, Isabel Trick, Associate Director at the Consultants Global Council. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
The France 24 debate, where you can join the conversation you have on Facebook and Twitter, hashtag F24debate. To win outright on Saturday, the top vote getter needs a majority of the ballots and at least 1/4 of the votes in 24 of the 36 states. Now, it's always happened up to now. Will this time be different? Vedika Bael has more.
It's the last leg of his nationwide tour. And here in Lagos, Bola Ahmed Tinubu receives a raucous welcome in what's the last presidential rally for the ruling All Progressives Congress before Saturday's election. Formerly the city's governor for 2 terms, the 70-year-old political strongman reiterated he has the experience that Nigeria needs.
All the agenda set in our program, renewed hope manifesto, will be pursued diligently, vigorously, with all our energy.
Tinubu is one of the front-runners in a 3-way race to succeed the outgoing President Muhammadu Buhari, who critics say has not fulfilled his policies. Running on behalf of the main opposition, the People's Democratic Party, is ex-Vice President Atiku Abubakar, in his 6th time running for Nigeria's highest office.
If you give us your mandate, we promise to live by our promises, to make sure that we have a united country, that we have a peaceful country, that we have a buoyant economy for our country.
Trying to break up the two-party system is the Labour Party's Peter Obi, a businessman and former governor who's gained popularity with the youth in his message of change. More than 93 million are registered to vote in Saturday's election, as the country battles an inflation rate soaring over 20%, rising unemployment and rampant insecurity, including Islamist groups in the country's north and a separatist insurgency in the southeast.
Manuel Iga, first off, do polls work in Nigeria? Is there any way to predict who's got the momentum?
Oh, we've seen several polls done in the previous weeks.
Because I was looking at the newspapers this Wednesday, and according to what you read, you had completely different favorites.
Well, if you're doing a let me say, stock taking on the polls, well, depending on who is doing the polls, it's Peter Obi coming on top, or Bola Ahmed Tinubu of APC, or his counterpart in the main opposition party, PDP, Atiku Abubakar. So I've seen different polls showing each of those 3 candidates coming on top. But it looks like there have been more polls recently placing Peter Obi on top. So we have to be kind of a bit objective on that. But that notwithstanding, of course, we have two giant candidates, the APC outgoing ruling party candidate and the main opposition candidate, Atiku Abubakar, PDP, which had governed Nigeria for 16 years before the 8 years now being delivered by APC. So we think the winner, or eventually the winners of the first round, will come from amongst these three. If we are careful, we should also add a fourth person.
Fourth candidate. We'll talk about the fourth candidate.
Rabiu Kwankwaso of NNPP.
In a moment. You need a well-oiled machine to be able to run a campaign in a nation of more than 92 million voters. The two Big Ten parties, though, have the same problem, which is infighting. Many grumbling over the choice of candidates. Former Vice President Atiku Abubakar has to contend with the G5, that's 5 state governors from the PDP ranks, who've publicly voiced their displeasure with his 6th run for president. Daniel Bwala, your thoughts on the challenges Abubakar faces?
Well, thank you for having me, and good evening to your viewers. No doubt there is a disconnect between the realities on ground and what the press, especially the Nigerian press, as well as the pollsters, are carrying. I start by saying that outrightly, I tend to look at polls in Nigeria with skepticism. And that's why I believe that Atiku Abubakar has a better chance, because we have our own yardstick for measurement, which traditionally has been consistent with political participation in Africa and in Nigeria. You see, because polling from the perspective of the Western world is based on statistics, but a lot of variables are constant, like social status, people are living above poverty level, so it's easy for you to run a poll and have an accurate or near accurate result. But when it comes to Africa, there are diversities, and you have a lot of differences. For example, if you come to Nigeria, there are people who are well-educated, Harvard-trained, but they are not comfortable on Twitter. There are people also who are non-educated that are more effective on Twitter. You have religious dichotomy, you have social class dichotomy, ethnic dichotomy, and then you have differences in terms of geographical development. And then, of course, above all, the problem of power, which has rendered a lot of people incapacitated in dealing with those platforms.
Well, let me put the question to you this way, Daniel. Can you be elected president of Nigeria without one of the two big parties?
Oh, can you be a president without one of the two big parties? No. You can only be a president, that, to the best of my knowledge, in Nigeria, when you have scored the majority of the lawful vote cast, and when you have also had 24% in 25% in 24 states of the Federation. So that can happen whether you are in a new party or you are in a big party. But historically, it is impossible, and I use the word carefully, it is impossible for a candidate who is emerging as an emerging concept within a short period of time to win that election. I know that the idea of the energy around Peter Obi has been overblown, but the result will show by Saturday that he is actually overrated, because Peter Obi is not a new phenomenon. Peter Obi does not have an ideology that is maybe like that of Macron. Peter Obi does not have a checkered history of activism that suggests that he carries the interests of the young demographics that are craving for it. In actual fact, he took advantage of a movement, but substantially, what their objectives are and what he's portraying are different. This is without denying the fact that he's also an established politician who has been in practice for over 20 years. So he's not an emerging phenomenon. He doesn't have an ideology that is consistent with them, and he has not been able to cover the length and breadth of the country. And when it comes to your candidate, Atiku Abubakar, he's been called the Raila Odinga of Nigeria, like the Kenyan politician. Always a bridesmaid, never a bride. What makes it different this time? It's his 6th run for president. What can put him over the top? What makes it different this time around is that all the other candidates on the ballot against him have little or no experience of national government. So he has had the privilege of being a vice president at a very tumultuous time in Nigeria's history. And because the president at the time was going all over the world trying to secure debt cancellation, he learned the job. He learned presidency on the job. And throughout this period, he has been able to do substantially well. That has now given him edge over the other candidate. But above all, among the, manifestos of all of the candidates, economic experts, both in Nigeria and in England, have said that none of the manifestos is perfect, but among the manifestos, his own presents a clear path to the recovery of economy in Nigeria.
All right, let me bring in Aliyu Audu on this. Ola Tinubu, he has experience as a former governor of Lagos State. Why do you think that he has the best chance this time around?
All right, Bola Tinubu hasn't just the experience in public service. He's the most experienced when it comes to corporate governance. You know, having worked for Deloitte and Touche in America, and worked for ExxonMobil in Nigeria, and rose to the position of treasurer and auditor general of the American oil giant company in the 80s, and living in the 90s to join politics. He has been successful all through his sojourn in politics from 92 till date. You know, he won landslide in 92 as a senator in Lagos with the highest votes in the entire country at the time. And by 99 and 2003, he won, and he started, what we call public reform in earnest that has seen him change the economic fortunes of Lagos, and has seen Lagos grow from the average state that it is, with a lot of potentials, of course, but never turned into reality. He's been able to turn it around, human capital development, natural resources management, process improvement, establishment setup. And Lagos is the 5th largest economy in Africa today. Responsible for probably about 40% of the entire wealth of the country. And that shows he's been able to grow his party from a party that had just one state in 2003 to taking out the government in power after their wasteful 16 years of being in charge. And he has managed the political party, the APC, to power that saw Muhammadu Buhari elected president in 2015. He's consolidated in terms of political structure. He's the most experienced, he's the most qualified, and he's the most prepared.
So one of the criticisms that's been leveled, and we mentioned earlier those anti-corruption NSARS protests of 2020, that Bola Tinubu didn't distance himself enough from the police crackdown.
In what capacity exactly? I will agree with my brother and my friend Daniel Boala that I don't think, for instance, the insurrection at the Congress in America, in U.S. Capitol, is given the kind of reputation you guys give the NSAS. NSAS was a misguided, riot. I have problem with police brutality. I'm a young Nigerian, but I'll tell you that every system's got a way. There are ways of improving systems. Burning your own country and inhibiting freedom of movement of.
We seem to have a problem with the audio connection there.
With one of them.
Yeah. And you're back. Go ahead.
Clearly, the biggest victim of this is, and he was neither in government at the state level nor in government at the national level. He's been so successful and so good for 24 years. So I would expect a lot of hatred and enmities from here and there. But like my brother and Daniel said, the noise you hear do not account for 10% of the of the voices or the mindset of the population of Nigeria. They are misguided young people who have no record of where we're coming from as a nation, who do not understand what we have been through. It is very easy for them, because they are gullible, for an opportunist to come from nowhere. An opportunist who has had the opportunity, just like Bola Ahmed Tinubu, to govern his state, a state that has the highest number of billionaires in Nigeria. And today, everybody in Anambra State will tell you that is the biggest failure in terms of governance that Anambra has ever seen. coming out to portray himself as someone he's not, it can only sell to kids who are just 23, 24, 21 years. I am old enough, and majority of Nigerians are old enough to know that it's a scam.
You're saying it's a scam. Emmanuel Iga, do you think that those NSARS protests were, as you just heard Aliyu say, misguided riots?
Oh, I would say very far from that. NSARS protestants were mostly educated youths. There were some unemployed, uneducated youths that joined them for sure, but most of them were university people. I think it would be a little bit of like denigrating them to consider them as misguided. And I think these are the people that have come very massively in the streets of Nigeria to try to push for change. Now, I'm not representing any of the parties, though, but the push seems to be going in the favor of a particular candidate. And I think these youths should be seen as people who are mature, who have now understood what the stakes in democracy and good governance are. These are youths that have been thrown out of university for 9 months last year because of the government being unable to resolve a teacher election, a university teachers strike. Actually, because the professors, lecturers are amongst the most probably ill-treated. They are not getting the best for the efforts they put in teaching the youths of the nation. They are very well ill-managed, let me say, in terms of salaries and all that. So all that snowballed into a long strike that the government was not able to, resolve. And the youths, many of them today will not forget that they have lost one academic year because of that. They are faced with unemployment. 40% of the population unemployed, and it's basically youths. You said the average age is 18 years in Nigeria, and these are the people in the front line of the suffering and hardship in the nation. So I don't think it would be fair to say that these are people who don't know what they are doing.
Isabel Trick, of course, it's difficult sitting in a climate-controlled studio here in Paris because there is this worry that the perception of how this campaign is playing out from abroad is different from what it is inside of Nigeria. How does the race seem to you?
It's a very good point that you make. Of course, there are my colleagues in Nigeria who are following this election, every twist and turn on the ground. But because this election is of such a massive scale, 93 million voters, and it is so interesting this year, the three-horse race, that it really has captured the imagination of a large group of Nigeria watchers, Nigeria analysts, including myself, but also international companies with an interest in Nigeria, investors, international governments, international organizations. So there definitely is a massive interest in how this election is going to turn out. And we have especially seen a lot of coverage of those polls. And many of these polls have been led by Peter Obi. So the question of how much substance is there to the Peter Obi phenomenon has really captured the imagination. I think a particularly interesting point to make about the polls is, and I think some of these polls look quite credible, they seem well conducted. But there's one issue that you can't get around. Many of these polls have really large numbers of undecided voters, or voters who don't want to say who they're going to vote for. So even if you have polls with someone in the lead like Peter Obi who might have 27% supporting him, but then you have over 40% of voters who aren't ready to say who they're going to vote for. That, of course, makes it quite difficult to interpret these votes. And so I think people are really going to keep their eyes on how this election plays out in Nigeria on Saturday.
Okay, so the number of people who actually turn out, that's one factor when you're looking for the margin of error. The other is whether or not those voters are coming from urban or rural areas, whether they're young or they're old, Isabel.
Absolutely, and where are they going to turn out regionally in Nigeria? For instance, Peter Obi is particularly popular in the southeast, his home region, but it is the smallest region of Nigeria. It has the smallest number of registered voters, and historically also has had a relatively low voter turnout. And generally, in the last election, voter turnout in Nigeria was, I think, 34.7%, so very, very low even in regional comparison. And the big question is, as you say, lots of people are saying they are going to vote, but are they actually going to come out and vote on the day? And especially if you've got a large number of first-time voters, a lot of the 10 million new registered voters are young voters, I think more than 3/4. And especially a young voter might be more discouraged if they're encountering long queues or disorganization or other hurdles. So it is a really big question of how big is the turnout going to be. And I think that can really impact on which candidate will have a successful election day on Saturday.
Earlier in our conversation, you heard Daniel Buella draw that comparison with between Peter Obi and Emmanuel Macron. Macron, who first ran for president in 2017, he was 39 years old at the time. He took on the traditional Big Ten parties in France. It signaled generational change. Peter Obi is 61. He wants to be Nigeria's first president born after independence from Britain. He spoke to France 24's Georgia Calvin-Smith.
The vice presidential candidate will be persons born after independence. If we succeed, a generation would have come on board. And we are committed to it. With that, we're also thinking how to do things differently, how to give service. That was why, maybe that's why we're not doing it the old way.
He's an insurgent up to a point, Emmanuel Iga. As Aliu Audu was mentioning, he's also a former state governor, and he has been in business as well. And there's a whiff of scandal around all three of the candidates when it comes to past dealings.
Well, I think there's been a lot of searching around Peter Obi in terms of such scandals, etc. The major one that was mentioned was his presence in the famous Panama Papers, which he has had time to explain abundantly in the press, explaining that because he was becoming a governor in Anambra State, he kind of created a trust for his company. He was a successful businessman before he went into politics to become a governor. And he created a trust, and that is a trust that they found the trace of in the Panama Papers. And his intention, according to him, was to keep his private business away from public affairs that
he said he didn't know at the time.
Yeah.
Is he really something new, though, if he's already been a state governor?
Yeah, I think... well, he has had time to explain a lot about that and his achievements. I think his achievements have not been questioned by anybody because he's able to list them, explain them in terms of education, in terms of health, everything, and with figures, statistics, and everything. So in terms of scandal, I think probably he is the politician that we have in this race, probably with others like Rabiu Kwankwaso, that didn't have so much noise being made about, mismanagement of funds and all that. Obi would even tell you that he left a lot of money in the state coffers when he left, and he's not taking any pension benefits. So these are things that are very appealing to the youths that are looking for, let me say, a clean candidate, which is actually it's impossible to get, but at least when we're talking relatively, his ways in favor of
cleaner is your argument. Yeah. Conventional wisdom states that to win a nationwide election in Nigeria, you need to court at least two of the three big ethnic blocs. Bellwether states are places like Lagos, traditional home of the Yoruba, River States and its capital Port Harcourt, home to the Igbo, and Kano State in the north. In 2019, incumbent Muhammadu Buhari won the north and won Lagos. But Bola Tinubu may suffer in Kano, and that's because of, wait for it, a fourth man, Rabiu Musa Kwankwaso, also a presidential candidate who happens to be the two-time former governor of Kano state. Aliyu Audu, is that fourth man a problem for your candidate?
Not at all. I mean, I kind of understand how you guys say this because you're not here. I mean, I have followed local politics for 3 decades, including the annulled June 12th election. But I'll tell you for free that partisan structure is very important in Nigeria, like it is anywhere else. I mean, and the comparison. I mean, I'll quickly answer your question before I have response to some things the last speaker said. Kano is APC's home. Kano, I mean, our rallies in Kano so far, we control majority of the political structure in Kano. Rabi Kwankwaso can only pose threat to the PDP Atiku side because up until 2019 and beyond, he was part of them. While he was with them in 2019, we defeated them landslide in the same Kano. And I mean, you can only share out of what you have. You know, he has nothing on APC, so whatever votes he's going to get is going to come from PDP and not APC's bloc. And APC currently holds, you know, the major control of Kano. We're going to clean it. We're going to sweep it clean. Lagos is home to Asiwaju, and I mean, that's where we expect the highest number of votes for Asiwaju, and that's going to come because I mean, Lagos transformation is evident. It is evident when we talk about Asiwaju's excellent leadership skills. Then we have the River State, which is currently, I mean, the governor of River State currently, even though he's in PDP, has said openly time and time again that he isn't going to work for Atiku, and he has made it known that he's going to work for APC. We have our APC structure that is there. Then we have the other third strength at the state level, the SDP, whose gubernatorial candidate has declared that he's going to work for the APC and the Bola Ahmed Tinubu. The way I say it, I mean, anyone talking about rerun in the coming election knows little or nothing about Nigerian politics. It's going to be a landslide victory for Asiwaju. Now, on to Peter Obi. You did say, the last speaker did say something about him making it. I think he has not even agreed to the details in the Panama Papers. And those are accounts he operated while he was governor. And they talk about him leaving excellent track record. You don't list achievements that cannot even be credited to council bosses, like local government bosses or district heads, as your achievement as governor. Peter Obi earned from federal allocation nothing less than 850 billion naira for the 8 years he was in governor. When you look at Nigerian revenue and how it was distributed between the 3 tiers of government, the local and the state and the federal government, you realize that the highest period we've had, the highest revenue as a nation, has tallied with the period that Peter Obi was in government as governor, and he's shown nothing. You know, he did nothing to show that. You can't say you buy a few laptops for students in 2000 and you call that an achievement. That's what individuals do. Health sector, the doctors were on strike for 13 months under him. They were on strike up until he left office. Peter Obi was in government for 8 years. For the majority of 8 years, he did not conduct local elections until 2 months ago. He's not a Democrat. He does not, I mean, he has not shown any human being that he has grown. He was a governor. He had people like commissioners, SA. None of them are with him today, or none of them is with him today. I mean, when you look at the Asiwaju, you look at from the vice president to the speaker to ministers, people who are going around the country campaigning for him are people he brought up, you know.
All right, so disagreement between Aliyu Audu and Emmanuel Iga on this, but you make an important point, Aliyu, that to win an election, you need to build coalitions, and what's for certain is that you can't run a campaign without cash. Which brings us to what's been something that's at times overshadowed the campaign. Why did Nigeria's government decide to change the banknotes the same month as elections were being held? President Buhari has since rolled that back, but not before some clashes and riots. Leo McGuinn has more on that.
In this Lagos market, fruit, vegetables and fresh meats are all in plentiful supply, but with barely anyone to buy them. And for good reason. It's almost impossible to withdraw money here. Nigeria plagued by a shortage of cash.
I mean, market since 1 p.m. I'm not able to transfer. Transfer is not going through. I'm not able to get cash. The little cash I can get, nobody's accepted. Everybody's affected. The rich, the poor, the middle class, everybody's affected by this decision.
The problem? The switch to a new currency, in circulation since late January, but almost impossible to find. The majority of the country's banks have a lack of these new bills, some people queuing for hours on end in an attempt to get their hands on the new currency. Throughout Nigeria, the shortage has caused a violent response, with rioters smashing ATMs and looting banks. President Muhammadu Buhari has been forced to backtrack and put the old currency back into circulation.
I have given approval to the CBN that the old 200 naira banknotes be released back into circulation, and that it should also be allowed to circulate as legal tender.
A temporary measure that will last just 60 days. After that, the old currency will be useless once more. The country's presidential election takes place at the end of February. Buhari was counting on this new currency to limit vote buying during the election. But he is now being accused by the opposition of depriving them of resources and preventing them from campaigning.
Tempers, by the way, still flaring over the banknote issue. Governors from Bola Tinubu's APC filing a lawsuit against the governor of the central bank and the federal attorney general. They accuse them of ignoring the Supreme Court's order to lift the ban on those old banknotes. Isabel Trick, there's even been speculation that this untimely decision to switch banknotes in the middle of a campaign at a time when a lot the ones organizing those campaigns need cash in hand, that somehow could have even been orchestrated inside the high halls of power against their own candidate. I mean, this is just speculation, but what do you make of this timing?
Like you mentioned, there's probably few elections that are as rife with speculation as Nigeria's, but there has been some murmuring, there has been some speculation about whether Buhari is not as excited as he should be about Bola Tinubu as the candidate of the ruling party. So there definitely has been that speculation. On the other hand, the official reason the central bank and the government put forward for the change of the banknotes at this time was, on the one hand side, to limit vote buying, but also to bring more cash back into the bank system, because there's too much cash held outside the banking system. And you could argue that generally this is a good idea. It's been done by other countries, by India, also with some challenges. But the timing of it certainly is quite difficult. And I think really you can't blame some of the opposition parties, even the Electoral Commission, struggling to access cash that it needs to pay its staff, fine staff. And of course, there's also the question, if cash is now so rare, are you actually going to rule out vote buying? Or, as someone I've been speaking with the other day has said, are you actually just going to make vote buying cheaper because people will be so desperate for cash that they might be willing to accept a lower sum than it probably would have cost in the past?
Daniel Bwala, your thoughts on this issue? What do you make of this timing?
Please, I want to request that you permit me to react to the issues raised about Peter Obi. It's very important. You know, by my discipline of law, when an issue is raised and you don't get the opportunity to react to it, it is deemed as if you have admitted.
For sure.
Quite rude. So first of all, Peter Obi's, most of the pollings that have come out were pollings done by his surrogate, and they never doubted that. Secondly, on the credibility issue, Peter Obi was alleged to have kept money in this during the time as a governor in the state and did not invest in infrastructure, because the bank where the money was kept was a bank called Fidelity Bank, to which he was a chairman. So the conflict of interest was raised. There is also the issue of human rights violation. During his time, there were extrajudicial killing at the time. With respect to the Panama report, Peter Obi did not explain, as what adduced by the speaker in your studio. Peter Obi admitted to Premium Times that indeed it was wrong, but he thought at the time he did that there was a law called Code of Conduct law that prohibited that kind of activities, even though Code of Conduct is part of the things they teach in elementary school in Nigeria. And then thirdly, what is going against him is that he talked about consumption to production as his philosophy of leadership. But evidence has shown he has never been the type that believes in that, because all of his investments, most of which are outside Nigeria, were investments that were based on consumption rather than on production. what is going against Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the other candidate, relates to this Naira policy. And that is the fact that it is the government of APC, it is the party of APC that had been consistently dishing out policies that are incoherent and inconsistent over the past 8 years, and have now come up with this policy actually as a strategy, applying the laws of power. When you know you have not done well enough, you will now create a problem, provide a solution, and you become useful. So they came up with this problem to plunge the people into a deeper mess so that whatever they come up with as a solution will now give them the reinventing capacity. Unfortunately for them, it has backfired because it is a war between themselves, and the Nigerian people have come to this realization that nobody is prepared for another 4 years of the last 8 years. And in contrast to Atiku, what is going for him is that because of experience, knowledge, and character, and from the private sector, he has consistently led in job creation. He has consistently led in empowerment in the area of education. People believe that at this time, Nigeria needs a private sector-led economy to come out of the doldrum. And of all the manifesto, it is Atiku Abubakar who presents that path.
Emmanuel Iga, the banknotes, a problem created so that it could be a problem solved?
Well, I think the president did say that he wanted to plug all the loopholes in the Nigerian electoral system. And he was going to do everything to make it impossible for any of the candidates to use probably immense resources accumulated by such a candidate to try to maybe buy votes and do whatever might make the results of the elections not to reflect the will of the people. I think the president is taking this very seriously, and probably this change of Naira notes was intended, that's what most people are speculating, was intended to make this more difficult, vote buying. The reason that Asiwaju Bola Tinubu's name is being mentioned more and more, I think, is in this regard, is simply because it is the APC that is crying most about this currency change. There are other candidates, frontline candidates like Atiku Abubakar. We don't hear him. He doesn't seem to be saying, oh, this is too bad for me. Peter Obi, or Kwankwaso, all the other candidates there are 18 candidates. They are all like quiet about this, except Bola Ahmed Tinubu and APC.
So
probably his representative here might shed. Well, probably his representative will explain that. But I think what the president wants to leave as legacy, if anything, because his 8 years of government has really not been flamboyant, but he said himself, the legacy he would want to leave for Nigeria is free, fair, transparent elections which reflect the will of the people. And I think if he can achieve this, the history of Nigeria will be very clement in judging him afterwards.
Aliyu Audu, is this Muhammadu Buhari trying to leave a legacy by trying to clean up politics at the 11th hour, or undermining the potential successor from his own party?
I'll work with the latter. But then again, I will like to put clearly out there that the reason Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, my presidential candidate, has been vocal about the ill-conceived and ill-implemented Naira swap policy is that as a great economist that he is, he's able to see problems before the problems manifest. And unlike the other candidates who are very poor and have demonstrated poor economic quality, management qualities in their previous assignments, we have an economy of $450 billion US, that's 95% informal. So I do not have a problem with wanting to go cashless. But what I have problem with is when whatever motive you are selling is just a smoke screen. Now, I'll say this, that if the real intention is to stop vote buying, are we saying that as a country, we do not mind shrinking our economy just to stop politicians from buying vote? And I'll say this with two examples. 1992, the presidential election that brought in MKO Abiola is till date, regarded as the most credible, the fairest, and the freest election in Nigeria. There was no such thing as cash crunch. The fact is, to run election in a country as big as Nigeria with a population of over 200 million.
So is the outgoing president trying to undermine your candidate?
I don't know what his intentions are, but I mean, I think if anyone tries to undermine a man who has been successful politically for the past 24 years, it's because they have underrated his capacity or they have limited his strength to just being finance driven. I mean, he has built people, he has built institutions, and like we have seen, these people and this institution are stepping up for him. Kano went agog, Rivers State went agog. And every state he has visited has had the highest number of crowd attending his rally. He had the highest number of grassroots mobilizers in every local government of Nigeria working for him day and night non-stop. I mean, it's beyond, when you're on top, there is envy. I mean, I really do not think that Atiku has been silent. He hasn't been. He came out, and Peter Obi came out to praise the policy, because at the initial stage, when our candidate complained, he thought it was against us. But I mean, a few days ago, he's come to make U-turn, and that shows how inconsistent, just like his political sojourn has been inconsistent. And such leader is a no-no for the Nigeria we want to build.
All right, we're running short on time. So, Isabel Trick, I just want to conclude by picking up on a point that Emmanuel Iga made, which is the legacy of the outgoing president as we head towards Saturday's first round.
Legacy, not flamboyant. And looking at this from the outside, it's hard to disagree, and that may even seem generous. If you're looking at Buhari back when he came in, I think he made two big promises on security and the economy. And it's difficult to argue that he succeeded on reviving Nigeria's economy, boosting Nigeria's economy. Nigeria's economy experienced 2 recessions during his tenure. Of course, he's not solely to blame to this. There's the oil price crash of 2016. There's the pandemic of 2020. But he left Nigeria ill-prepared to deal with both of these shocks. On security as well, I would argue there have been some interesting successes, some good successes, especially against Boko Haram. But equally, the sources of insecurity are now much more diverse. And depending on who you're speaking with, people in different parts of the country who previously didn't experience this level of insecurity are now experiencing different sources, different types of insecurity. So it is quite difficult to argue that Buhari leaves a particularly strong legacy after 8 years in power.
And a quick prediction, will it be 1 round or 2?
Difficult to say. I do believe it's going to be the most difficult for candidates to achieve the state thresholds, 25% in 2/3 of the states. I think candidates are going to struggle with that. So I could see a 2nd round.
All right, that we'll have to leave it there, unfortunately. So much more to talk about. I want to thank you, Isabel Trick, in London. I want to thank Aliou Audou and Daniel Bwala in Abuja. Good luck to both of you, gentlemen, in the run-up to Saturday, and to Emmanuel Iga. Thank you for being with us here in the France 24 debate. More coverage of Nigeria's elections on our website, france24.com.